Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. You are going to love this conversation today because I have one of my good friends, Terri Hitt, on with me today. She and I have connected virtually, we've connected in real life. And now we've been talking about this conversation, Terri, for months as you've been preparing for your book to launch. So, congratulations. Your book is now, 2 days old as this episode is coming out. And I want to really encourage those of you who are listening today. We're going to be talking about how to not fall into the good mom trap because the way you invest your time has a ripple effect on generations. And I know that a lot of my audience is, we're kind of in that season of our kids are, grown and maybe out of the nest. And so you may be right now like parenting adult kids. This is for you too. You may now be in the grandma stage like I am, and really looking at how do I influence this next generation? How do I invest time? So whether you're in the throes of motherhood or, it feels like a different season, this conversation is going to be for you. So I really encourage you to listen in. You're going to love Terri. So Terri, I want my audience to get to know you. So before we dive into the work you're doing, just tell us about what kinds of things does this season of life hold for you?
Oh my goodness. Right now, the season of life holds just trying to rest and breathe in Him. And you know what? That is something that should be a season. It should be not seasonal, right?
Right?
It should be year round.
Yeah.
And just going through different things in life that have forced me even deeper into His arms, not even to mention that book launch you talked about. But so that is where I am right now.
Yeah. And where we should be and where we want to stay, right? And not, feel like we make our way out of there. And I love that. And it's really woven into your story. So tell us, before you tell us your story, tell us about the work you do. Tell us about the book that just launched, because I want to make sure people up front, in case they get distracted or something like that, they know exactly what it's called. They know exactly where to find it. And then I want to hear how God brought you to this place, because I know there's always a story behind the story of the work that we're called to do. So yeah, let's dive into that a little bit.
You are right. You are so right. Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me here and for allowing me to speak to you and to your audience. It's something that is a blessing. It's something I hold sacred. So thank you. And yes, I am Terri Hitt. I am a Christian motherhood mentor. And I say it that way because I love it. It is something that God has interwoven into me. I breathe Him in and try to breathe Him out, not only to my children and family, but to those women that I mentor, pointing the way to Him. And yes, I did just have a book released, and it is called The Good Mom Trap. And to add the subtitle to that, it's Break the Lie That Good Parenting Creates Godly Kids. So it is a book that is part memoir, part personal development, and is a tribute not only to the Lord, but to my oldest child who passed at the age of 29.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your story because I love that your book is not just a how to parenting book. I've been reading it over the last couple of weeks. It really does weave your story into why you are so on mission with this message, why God has uniquely equipped you and called you to this. So, wherever you want to pick up, because of course we want people to buy the book to get the whole story. But yeah, just kind of take us a little bit on the journey of how God brought you to this place where you're mentoring moms and grandmas, and as well as sharing this story and what the Lord has taught you.
Thank you. Yes, you're right. I love the way that in the beginning you talked about it doesn't matter where you are, because think about this. As mothers, we never retire from being a mother. I mean, and even if my oldest daughter, Jamie, who's passed, was the only child I had, I'm still her mother,
Yeah.
right? But just to back up a little bit, my story started when I was 18 years old, and that's when I became a mother. And I'm now, as of like what, 2 days ago, I'm 65 years old.
Mm.
So I have had quite a long time of being a mother. And it's honestly one of the greatest joys the Lord has ever given me. Did I enter into that season that way? No, I was scared to death to be a mom. And that is because I didn't have my support from the Lord. Well, He was there. I didn't know Him yet, and I didn't have my strength found in Him. And so, as I mentor mothers, I love to point the way to Him and equip them, encourage them, enable them to do the same in their lives. And I've, of course, got my little techniques that I like to work with mothers, but I never want them to rely on a mentor. I think when people hear the word mentor, they think, oh boy, here's another person who is going to, like make me stay stuck to them for the rest of my life, or I
Uh,
have to look to them, right, for support or something. But the way I like to mentor is to really equip women to be able to find what they need in the Lord themselves. In fact, I
yeah.
had one mom who said, I have been in all sorts of programs, and they always kept me coming back to them to find answers. And she said, when I came to you and worked with you, you taught me how to fish.
Hmm.
And so that is what I love because that is what Jesus does for us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, motherhood is a journey, and you can't always like in the moment be like, "Hey, I got to call Terry." It's sometimes we have to just step up and be the mom that God is calling us to, even if it feels messy, even if we're not 100%, confident we're making the right decision, but lean into him ultimately, as that. And I'm so sorry for your loss, and I can't imagine what that must be like to have lost one of your children. And yet, I love that you are seeing how God is redeeming that story, and really taking you on a journey, and then now you being able to take other people on a journey to what kind of a mom they are. And I know, yeah, you talk about like not falling into the good mom trap, right? And so we live in this really busy age. I mean, sometimes I honestly say, so I'm 52, my kids are all out of the house. I'm in the grandma stage now as well. And, sometimes I watch my friends and I look at all the influences that are out there now on kids. And I'm like, I'm so glad I parented kids before cell phones, before
Right.
a lot of internet stuff before, because there are so many things out there, right? So let's kind of like talk about maybe some of the challenges that parents or grandparents are facing right now. What are some things that tend to get in the way of, or tend to be maybe things that we run up against as parents or grandparents in this day and age, in this culture we're living in?
Right. I honestly, and it's not just because of who I'm talking to, I think that busyness
Mm,
is one of the biggest detriments to us. I
yeah.
think that, I mean, I can list a whole lot of other things which we can go into, but that is truly the number one thing because I cannot even count the number of women who have told me, well, I love the Lord. I just don't have time to read the Bible. And
We'll
when we're
send them to
that,
redeem her time. We'll get we'll teach them they have time, right? Yeah, but it's so
yes,
true.
I mean, it is true. I mean, if we really truly, I tell women, let's sit back, and I tell myself this too. Let's sit back and really look at what we say we believe,
Mm,
right? Do we really believe that Jesus died for us? Do we really believe that God is present? Do we really believe, and you can, add to that list, then I need to live like it, right?
yeah, yeah.
And really, one of the biggest things that thrust me into what I do now when I lost my daughter was just that. I mean, I knew I had a close relationship with the Lord, and I thought I was living in light of eternity.
Mm,
But when I lost her, then I felt straddled on a bridge between two worlds, between eternity and now. And that's when it was like God lifted a veil and I could really clearly see how I was not taking every moment captive for Christ. Now,
mm,
I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, now Terry's lost a daughter, so she's perfectly in alignment with the
yeah,
Lord, right?
yeah,
Terry is still human and learning and growing every day, but I don't want to be in 5 minutes from now the woman that I am now
yeah, yeah.
because, one of my favorite passages for parenting is in Deuteronomy 6, and it's verses 5 through 7. I quote the most, but it's also 5 through 9 because those verses 8 and 9 hold so much weight. But, we can't live moment by moment with our children unless we live moment by moment for the Lord first. And
Mm,
if you look at that passage of verses, it tells us exactly what we need to do. Think of Him when we're going along the way, when we lie down, when we are out and about. I mean, it's a beautiful passage of verses with the exact instructions. But then that weighty part of 8 and 9, it talks about, and I don't have it verbatim. I do have it at my desk. Let's see if I can find it here because I do keep these at my desk. Yes. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise. And here's the even meatier part, because that first part of the passage is clear instruction, right?
mm.
And we can get into how to do that if you like. But, and then you shall bind them up as a sign on your hand. They shall be frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and your gates. Well, we think, okay, that's just for Jewish tradition stuff. That doesn't really mean anything to us today. But if you stop and you think about it, when you think about frontlets between your eyes, that means keeping God's word. That means keeping the Lord in front, top of mind, right? That's what it means to us. And then drilling down to see how we can do that in our life and with our kids. And then when you say write them on the doorpost of your house and your gates, well, doorposts support the home's integrity, right? They're part of that support system of the home. And so when you think about maintaining integrity, if you think about when it talks about the doorposts of your house and your gates, doorposts and gates mean protection. And so he is our protection. We're keeping him front of mind. He's our protection. And then we can, burst out into in our relationships, in our parenting, in our business, all of those things. And it all starts with this core message right here.
Yeah, it's
It
so
just lights
beautiful.
me up.
Yeah. And this is how I just was having this conversation with my CEOs. We're reading the book The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer, and we were talking about how Jesus was like the watch how he lived. It was a lifestyle. It was that he was keeping, obviously, he knew the word because he was the word, right? And so he had the Father right there with him at all times. And that was then impacting how he spent his time. And it protected him from the evil one and even the Pharisees and the people who wanted to push in and push back and, keep him from doing what he was doing. And, yeah, and such a beautiful picture of that. I want to circle back to something that you talked about earlier about busyness being really one of the number one obstacles to parenting. And it's so true. And I often use motherhood actually as an example when I talk about time because, think about when you had that first baby, or maybe it was your second or third put in your arms. Like prior to that, you probably had a quote busy life. You probably, already felt like you didn't have time for a bunch of extra stuff and you were always going and doing and they may be really great things. But when that baby gets put in your arms, what happens? You find
Take
time for
time.
that baby, even if your plate was already full, right? Even if your 24 hours was already filled up, that new baby comes and you find time because there's value in that life, and because you understand that your role is to is you've been entrusted with this life, right? And so now you are caring for this little one, in the way that God has called you to. And so, yeah, when we say we don't have time for something, essentially we're saying this doesn't matter. And
Yes.
yes, whether we're saying it out loud to the Lord, I don't have time for you, or we're just not making time for him, that's essentially what we're saying. If we're saying that out loud to our kids, I don't have time for you, or we're just always busy and not available, like either way, it has an impact. So let's talk about especially when we think about busyness, because I think you're right. So many other things tie into that. And this is where I always joke and I go, I can make any conversation come back to time. And pretty much the number one obstacle to anything on the planet is time. Like I started my business journey in health coaching, and it was me picking up the phone to follow up with clients and just hearing, oh, I haven't had time. I've just been busy, and I'm like, okay, there's something here we got to dive into. Like this isn't what God has for us. So when we are, running into that obstacle of busyness, or we think we're just busy, right? Like what impact does that have in both the short term as moms and grandmas and the long term?
Why? I mean, number one, right now, if we say in front of our children that we don't have time for the Lord, we're impacting generations.
Yeah.
And I hold that dear because the word that you used earlier is the word I always use. We were entrusted with God's children. We think they're ours, whether we have them by birth and they're placed in our arms, or whether we adopt. And I've done both twice. And so, either way, we have been entrusted with the Lord's child. We are to keepsake their heart, guard their heart. And just like you say, you can make anything go back to time, I can make anything go back to the Lord. Because and to the heart, we look at the world today and the issues, it stems from the heart, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we neglect to be in the word, when we neglect to let our kids see us in the word, when we neglect to be in the word with our kids, when we neglect to pray for them, to pray over them, to pray with them, and to let them know when they give us a problem and we try to do what I started out doing the first time I parented, of, oh, I know you're strong enough. You can do this. I believe in you. Versus, let's see, what does God's word say about this? Or have you prayed? Or let me stop right now and pray with you. Let's sit down right now and find out how to handle this the way that God would desire us to. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Taking everything back to Him. When we don't make time for those things, that is setting our kids up to emulate what we do and continue that terrible path through generations
Yeah.
instead of walking that narrow road that truly leads them to Him.
Yeah. Right. Because we can say things, we can say this is what you should do or not do, have it come out of our mouth. But if they're not seeing the actions, things are
Yeah,
more caught, right, as they say, than just taught.
right.
And so they are going to pattern after the things we do more than just the things that we say.
Mhm.
Yeah. And here's where it comes down to time because I mean, for most of us, again, it's going to be different based on your kids' needs and your parenting season and things like that. But for most of us, like 18 years ish is about what we get,
Right.
And so, you think about like how much investment, goes in that time and what happens if we
Yes.
don't intentionally invest time in showing them, taking them to scripture versus just maybe trying to modify the behavior and things like that. Like what does that cost us when we're not intentionally investing time ourselves, with the Lord, and then also in bringing our kids to that same place.
Right. And I want to give hope to anyone who is here listening because, yes, it's beautiful when you're not a mother yet and you can think about how you want to raise a child someday, or if you have young ones and you're looking for mentorship. But I want to give hope to those who have children who maybe have gone astray. Maybe they've got teens who aren't walking with the Lord or adult children, because our influence, like we said at the beginning of this conversation, our influence never ends. And
Yeah.
even if they're in a time that feels like a hopeless season, and it feels like maybe they have no communication with their child right now, hope is not lost.
Yeah.
The Father never gives up on us, right? And
Yeah.
He is the best Father in the world, and He has prodigal children.
Yeah.
And so our influence still reaches out. And the way that we continue to grow in the Lord and deepen and widen our walk, that will influence them in some way. The rest is up to the Lord. So I
Yeah.
just I just want people to always have hope.
Yeah, right. And he can redeem the years the locusts have eaten. I mean, like
Yes.
again, we're so linear with our time and our finite minds can only understand, like one thing after the next in the way that we measure time. And yet God is beyond time
Yes.
and can, yeah, work in ways that we can't even see. And his timing is always different than ours, usually, but it's always better, right? Because he can see the end from the beginning. And yeah, it's such a beautiful thing. What I'm
Like
just curious
I
because, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and not to compare God to the Wizard of Oz, but if you can imagine the man behind the curtain, right? The way that we think about God, like you said it beautifully. And I always like to think of him, working back there where I can't see him. Never lose that hope that he is working. We just don't know what he's doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. So true. So most of my audience are business owners, right? So it's so interesting because especially as women, I think our lives are so integrated. It's not like this is my life and this is my business. It's not like this is the Lord and this is everything else, right? Everything is so intertwined. And so yeah, I just would love for you to speak just real quickly before we kind of go into like, okay, how can we start moving in a different direction? When we are in a place where either we're not intentionally investing time in the way we're called to, yeah, what cost does that have on, not just our relationship with the kids, right? Obviously that's going to be, we can see that, but like how does that maybe even have a ripple effect into things like our business and into the way that we're able to show up to that?
Yeah. Our mind,
Yeah.
our mind, because what we allow into our mind affects everything, like you said. I mean, women are great jugglers. We can do so many things at
Right.
once.
Or we think we
And
can.
that's right. And pride ourselves on it when we
Right.
shouldn't. Pride
Yeah.
comes before the fall, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's what we allow into our mind. And when I work with moms, I have what I call the motherhood mindset model.
Mm.
And we really, really get equipped to take our thoughts captive for Christ because what we allow to go into our minds, whether it's by us or something that somebody has spoken over us, something we've heard, maybe something that we were raised with, anything, it doesn't mean that it's true.
Mm.
But we take it in and we hold it captive like it is, right? And we begin to maybe the way we use our time, what we value, all those things get affected by some little seed that went into us that probably isn't even accurate. And it's definitely not in alignment with what God would say about us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that the mind is such a powerful thing. And that is something that we definitely need to take captive for Christ
Mm.
as it will flow into our businesses. Maybe you don't want to get up that day and do your business, right? Because of those thoughts and then it goes into feelings and emotions and all of that. So it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's also interconnected, right? Because that's how God designed us in all of that. So obviously, that's not where we want to stay. We want to
Yes.
be intentional, right? Not perfect, but intentional with our time, with our relationships with our kids or our grandkids, even those, like you shared, that maybe are estranged right now or wandering and that kind of thing. So, how do we stop being just a good mom and start stepping into being a godly mom or a godly grandma in the way that God has called us to with the ones that He's entrusted to us?
I think it really begins with defining what good means. In this world, and it drives me crazy. This is one of my pet peeves because we hear, you need to be a good person, or we need to raise our kids to be good people, self-sufficient good people, right? And we need to be good business women. We need to be good to others. And in today's world, that can mean anything. And we're so intolerant of each other. And I think we really start to worry about not wanting to step on other people's toes instead of really looking to what God says about good. And I've heard, well, but in the beginning, God called what he created good. But then you have to step back from that and think, what would a holy God define as good versus a sinful human? How
Yes.
we would define good, right? And that is where I like to shift people from being a good mom and what the world says is good and what I sought after as good, which is in the book,
Mhm.
um, and then hold it against what God calls godly and move ourselves, whether it is in parenting, in relationships, in the way that we run our businesses and deal with those people we work with. Do we want to be good? My gosh, no. We want to be godly and to capture all that that entails and all the blessings that come from God in simply striving to be more Christ-like.
Yeah, and there is a difference, right? And I
Mhm.
love even that you put that in that tagline that, just because we do good parenting doesn't produce godly kids. It produces good kids, which is not a bad thing in and of itself, but like you're showing us, it's not the same thing and it's not what we're called to as parents. And so as moms, as grandmothers, even as someone may be listening today who maybe you're an aunt and you don't have kids of your own, and so you're or maybe you just are volunteering in your community and there are kids that you are entrusted to you. Like, how do we then show up as not just this good aunt or this good whatever, but as a godly woman who is really striving to please the Lord in what she does and seeking to not just raise, little people that are, quote, checking boxes or doing the right thing, but that are really seeking after the Lord with all of their heart, and loving their neighbor as themselves, like he tells us, in that. So it is,
Right.
it's a beautiful transition. Yeah. In that. So what would you say are maybe like, just a couple of practical steps or things that, we need to shift in order to start making this shift from being a good mom or grandma or aunt or caretaker to being a godly one?
Number one, what we talked about earlier with seeking the Lord and
Mm.
really getting into the Word and not just being a check off the box. Oh, I don't have time. I'll just get in there for 5 minutes and read and check it off. I've done it. But really studying, whether that be 10 minutes, 15, or if you're in a full fledged Bible study that takes longer, whatever meets the season that you're in right now. God knows your heart and God knows what you really truly have that quote time for, what you can make time for, right?
Yeah.
And start with that. And then, as we talked about, the mind, because we want to filter what goes into our mind and what goes into our heart. Because I like to say, inhale Christ. I hate to say on a mission, but I am urgently daily seeking the Lord because I want to always inhale him so that I exhale him, not
Mm,
only to my children or family, but to those around me. And do I fall short? Oh my goodness, yes, I do.
yeah.
But if I'm breathing him in, moment by moment, I'm going to start falling short less and less and less, right? Glory to him.
Yeah. And what
But
comes out of us is going to be because of what's filling us, right? So
exactly
we have to
right.
be inhaling him for him to be coming out. Yeah.
Yes, and it's funny if you have time for a short
Hmm.
story, I with my first two kids that I had at 18 and 21, they went through the public school system, and that's a whole other discussion, right?
Mm.
Of whether what's right for your family. But with my second two, I chose to homeschool. And when I first started homeschooling, I tried to pattern it after the way I was educated in public school or the way my kids, were taught in public school. And I quickly learned that God didn't call me to the season of homeschooling to be typical or to be good. He was calling me to make it something godly.
Yeah.
And so, I had certain steps that I did to incorporate that into the day. And when that happened, it truly was inhaling and exhaling Christ onto my children because they were there. I was able to see how God created them, how they were structured to learn, how I was structured to teach, and how the two of those could mesh, and so on. And I just think it's a beautiful illustration of how God equips each one of us. And when He purposed us with the children that He gave us, the ones He entrusted to us, He knew. He
Mm.
knew our backgrounds. He knew our weaknesses. He knew the strengths that He put in us, the ones that we were allowing Him to hold, to carry us through, right? To give us those strengths. And He knew what our abilities, talents, interests were, and what our kids would be. And He allows us the beauty of working with Him through Him as He carries us truly to find those in them and to bring those out to affect those next generations for Christ and to keep that faith going and growing into the branches of a beautiful tree, right?
Mm.
And I just think that it's such a beautiful thing that it all fits together, everything that we have said today. And I guess I just wanted to share that story as a reminder that everything is done in His strength and to look at your kids and your relationships with them and the way that you can still have that influence, but also affect your business because it flows the same way into your business, the people you work with, and the way that you see what they need and how God has filled you to reach them. It just all stems from the basic things that we talked about here today.
Yeah, yeah, it's so beautiful, and yet it is sometimes some days it feels like an overwhelming task, and we don't feel equipped or strong enough for it. And actually, I think that's probably the best thing is to recognize we can't do it on our own, and that
Right.
the Lord is right there saying, "I haven't intended for you to do it by yourself." Like this, let me show you how to do this and let me walk with you. And yeah, and let me fill in the gaps. I remember years ago when my kids were younger and I had a friend whose kids were just a little bit older. And I remember being on the phone with her one day and she told her kids, go put your shoes on. And I remember like being on the phone and being like, your kids can put their own shoes on? Like it just was like beyond me, right? But and those things were things I felt like I could teach, right? But then you start getting into more of the heart issues and, like the decision making and things like that as they get a little bit older. And you just sometimes feel like, Lord, like I'm not equipped for all of this. And I remember this same friend saying to me, Lissa, God, like you do your part, right? And you walk with the Lord and do your part and trust God to fill in the gaps. Like trust that this is not all about what Lissa can do or Terry can do or, fill in the blank with your name can do. This is, God is right there filling as you're filling and, where I am falling short, He is filling those gaps and He doesn't just step in the gap times. He's there right through all of it. And yeah, ultimately He's the one that's doing all the work. We're just partnering with Him. So I love this. And, obviously this has a ripple effect. It has a ripple effect in our relationships with those kids or grandkids. It has a ripple effect in our relationship with the Lord. even in our marriages, our businesses, the way that we serve in our community. Like, so many different things are impacted by this one area. And I love that you're speaking to it. So, what would be like one piece of encouragement that you would give to someone listening today? Now, I know we started off by, moms being in different places. So maybe you want to say something different to the one who's like still in the throes of motherhood, who's getting kids from point A to point B versus the one who's got an empty nest, or maybe even the one who has someone who's wayward, or a grandma who's, helping raise her grandkids, or just, helping come alongside her own kids as they're raising their kids. So you might want to say, something different to a different audience. But yeah, what would be some encouragement that you would give to someone listening today who really wants to grow in this, who doesn't want to fall into the good mom trap, and who wants to be a godly mom or grandma, or caregiver in whatever form that is?
I think one thing that overreaches to every category you mentioned is to never give up the hope and to trust. And, I hate that. And I don't use the word hate very often, but I really dislike that. What is that saying about, um, the Lord walks beside me? I can't remember the exact quote, but I never want God beside me.
Mm,
I never imagined the Lord beside me. And it's because I am in his arms.
yeah.
I want to always rest in his arms. And I want each one of us, everyone listening, to imagine themselves right now in the Lord's arms, and to tell themselves, I'm going to live my life in a way that I never step out, that I never want to be outside of his arms. Because think about it. Would you want to go through the high waters of life and all the trials and tribulations that we get hit with? Would you want to be down in those valleys, just walking hand in hand? No. I mean, could the Lord sustain us? Sure, he could. But wouldn't you rather be in his arms?
Mm,
And I think back to rocking children when they're little and how you can, at least I did. I always, even now, I kiss their foreheads, even when they're grown. I kiss their foreheads, and that scent that you can smell at their hairline. It's so intimate. It's so loving. It's so everything wonderful you can think. And I just imagine myself in the Lord's arms, him kissing my forehead, inhaling my scent, and saying, "Daughter, I created you. I created you for this time, for this purpose, and I'm not going to let you down. Don't step out. Don't step out of my arms, and I will sustain you." And so that's the advice that's overarching, no matter
yeah.
where we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And that will have, it will speak to every season of motherhood, and make the biggest impact. So I love that reminder. Thank you for that. And thank you for faithfully walking that out yourself. I know you're not here just saying this, and giving good advice. Like, this is what you're walking out, and you haven't done it perfectly, but you are continuing to, deepen and deepen that your intention in your walk with the Lord, and seeing, keeping yourself there. And so I just love that. And it's evident, I've met one of your daughters, and, she is just a beautiful, godly woman, and the way that she carries herself, and, her presence. And I know that it is because of the time that you have invested, that the Lord has given you to invest in her. So beautiful. We could talk all day. I mean, this is a topic that runs deep, especially in the hearts of us as ladies, as we think about, the joys and the struggles of motherhood and grandparenting, and just caretaking and things like that. So, what resources do you have to offer? I know we've got the book. So again, tell us the name of the book, tell us where we can find it. And then are there any other resources that would be a good next step for someone who wants to really start growing intentionally in this area?
Thank you. Yes. Let me go on and give you a couple of resources that I have for your audience. Typically, I offer one, and I really want to offer a couple today. The first one they can find at terrihitt.com, and then it's Good to Godly book. And that is the Good to Godly 31-day scripture and prayer guide.
Hmm.
That is a little 31-day kind of a devotional that they can step into when they're like, okay, I am going to make time for the Lord. The other one is terrihitt.com/astray.
Hmm.
And that is for anyone who has a child that they consider wayward and they're looking for hope and they just want encouragement and want to be better equipped. I think that those are two that can speak to many people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they can find the book, The Good Mom Trap, at Amazon. And I don't have it available on my website right now. I may do that in the future, but definitely at Amazon. And also, if they'd like to go to terrihitt.com/set apart, they can look at my program, the Set Apart Collective, and get a little bit more information and even contact me to get maybe a 20-minute get acquainted call to see if it would be a good fit to begin walking that journey to the Lord together.
I love it. So many great resources. We will make sure we link all of those in the show notes. So make sure you guys go and look for those. Definitely go grab the book, but then also look into some of these other resources. Terry just has such a heart to come alongside moms who want to be godly moms, and so you're gonna be blessed by just being in the room with her. So thank you, Terry. And my guests all or my audience knows I always invite my guests into the Redeemer Time community where we keep the conversation going because there are so many other avenues that we could be diving into. And so I encourage you, if you're listening and you're not a member of the Redeemer Time community yet, come and join us. We are a group of faith-focused entrepreneurs who are wanting to be faithful and fruitful with our time and to be the business owners, to be the moms, to be whatever the role is that God has called us to. So you can find us at redeemhertime.com/community. And Terry's going to be in there, so that'll be a great opportunity for you to get to share what really stood out to you or ask her a question. And yeah, get some mentorship and find out more about how she can walk alongside you. So we'll make sure to link to that in the show notes as well. So thank you, Terri. This episode is literally coming out. We're just into December now here and about to go into the holiday season and end up a year and getting ready to start a new one. So as you're thinking about like this season of your life, how would you answer the question, what is it time for?
Well, you're asking me.
I'm asking you. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
thought that is so beautiful. She's asking her audience that
Well, they
question.
can answer too. So everyone. But I want to
Really
hear
thought
from
I
you,
fell
Terri.
asleep there. I'm thinking, whoa, what a wonderful question. And you said, what do I have time for?
What is it time for?
Oh
What is
my
it time
goodness.
for?
Like I said at the beginning, it is time to rest in Him.
Yeah. So beautiful. And what a great way to go into the Christmas season, the Advent season, resting in Him, because then we're not going to miss what it is that He's doing. So I love it. Well, thanks for being here. Thank you for blessing us. And I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to, yeah, see what comes of this conversation.
It's always an honor. It is always an honor to talk to you. I greatly appreciate you so much. I think so highly of you. Thank you for your time today and for sharing your audience with me.
You are welcome.